You've probably noticed that two people can be dealing with the same pressure and still respond like they live on different planets. One person goes quiet, gets practical, and handles it alone. The other talks it through, looks for meaning, and wants to understand how it's affecting them. Neither reaction is better, but when you watch it closely, it starts to feel like more than personality. It feels like a nervous system shaped by a different era. That's the core psychology behind Gen X versus Millennials. It isn't just attitudes or trends. It's the environment that taught each group what safety looks like, what adulthood requires, and what kind of emotional expression is acceptable. People often frame it as work ethic or humor or being tough, but those are surface traits. Underneath, it's about adaptation. What you repeatedly had to do became what your brain learned was normal. Gen X is often associated with self-reliance, skepticism, and emotional restraint. Millennials are often associated with openness, collaboration, and emotional awareness. Research shows that when people grow up in environments where stability feels uncertain, they tend to develop stronger independence and a lower expectation of support. That doesn't mean they don't want support. It means their system learned not to rely on it. Studies suggest that this can turn into a default coping style. Handle it, move on, don't make it a big thing. Even when they care deeply, they may show it through action more than words. Millennials grew up during a different cultural shift. Many were raised with more emphasis on communication, self-esteem, and personal identity. Psychological studies indicate that when a culture consistently invites people to name emotions and reflect on experiences, emotional vocabulary and self-awareness increase. That can create a different baseline for what feels normal. Talking about stress doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like processing. Asking for help doesn't feel like failure. It feels like a reasonable response to a heavy world. This difference is one reason Gen X can sometimes perceive millennials as sensitive, while millennials can perceive Gen X as shut down. But what looks like sensitivity is often just visibility, and what looks like shut down is often just a learned form of control. Researchers have found that people regulate emotions in ways that match the social rules they absorbed early. If you grew up with the message that emotional expression creates problems, your nervous system learns containment. If you grew up with the message that emotional expression creates understanding, your nervous system learns articulation. Work and motivation are where the contrast becomes very obvious. Gen X tends to value autonomy. Millennials tend to value purpose and feedback. Recent research suggests that when people have experienced systems that don't reliably reward effort, they become less trusting of institutions and more focused on protecting themselves. That can show up as a strong desire to stay independent, avoid being trapped, and keep expectations realistic. Millennials often entered adulthood during high visibility and high comparison. Studies suggest that when social norms emphasize meaning and self-expression, people evaluate work not just as survival, but as identity. That's why "just do the job" can feel fine to one group and feel hollow to another. The relationship with authority also differs. Gen X often grew up learning that authority is inconsistent, so you rely on yourself. Millennials often grew up learning that systems should be questioned and improved. Research shows that when people feel a lack of control, they either adapt through self-reliance or through collective change. Both are survival strategies. One says, "I'll handle it myself." The other says, "This shouldn't be this hard for everyone." Technology adds another layer. Gen X remembers life before constant digital input. Millennials grew up as digital life became integrated into identity and social belonging. Psychological studies indicate that the brain adapts to the attention environment it's given. If you learned focus in a slower world, you may be more protective of quiet and less tolerant of constant interruption. If you learned focus while managing constant information flow, you may become better at rapid switching, but also more vulnerable to mental fatigue. That's why one person experiences notifications as neutral and another experiences them as pressure. In relationships, Gen X often values loyalty, privacy, and low-drama connection. Millennials often value communication, emotional transparency, and growth. Research shows that attachment behaviors are influenced by cultural expectations around closeness and independence. If your early environment taught you that you shouldn't need too much, you may feel safest with fewer emotional demands. If your environment taught you that closeness requires active communication, you may feel safest when things are openly discussed. The misunderstanding happens when each group assumes their comfort style is the normal one. The internal consequences of these differences are subtle but real. Gen X can carry a quiet loneliness while appearing completely fine because their identity may be built around not needing much. Millennials can carry a quiet pressure to constantly optimize their life while appearing emotionally intelligent because their identity may be built around self-improvement. Studies suggest that both patterns can drain mental energy over time. Self-reliance can turn into emotional isolation. Self-awareness can turn into over-analysis. One group may default to endurance. The other may default to reflection. Both can become heavy if there's no balance. What's interesting is that both generations often admire something in the other, even when they criticize it. Gen X may secretly respect millennials for naming things that were once ignored. Millennials may secretly respect Gen X for staying steady when things get chaotic. And that's where the comparison stops being a battle and starts being psychology. These are not personality flaws. These are adaptations to different worlds with different rules for safety, success, and emotional expression. So when you see Gen X versus millennials, you're not just watching opinions clash. You're watching two nervous systems speak different emotional languages. One leans toward control and endurance. The other leans toward clarity and meaning. Neither one is the full answer. They're two ways the human mind tries to stay stable in the world it was handed. If this felt familiar, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who's noticed the same generational split.